Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. And the Springboks will finish 2021 as they began at the top of the world rankings, which were confirmed today after the final round of the Autumn Nation Series, which saw the Springboks go down against England right towards the death of the game. But that big loss inflicted on New Zealand from France means that the Springboks will finish the year as the number one ranked team. So yeah, I mean, in probably what is going to go down as one of the most disruptive and strange seasons of all time for the Springboks, they will finish the year number one. And I think that they deserve it. I truly think they deserve it. I think that it's interesting that there have been so many naysayers, so much negativity surrounding the side and the coaches and the progression, the style of rugby and stuff like that. And yet you can't argue with the results because they continue to be number one ranked team in the world. And also, the best performing team in the Southern Hemisphere in the Autumn Nation Series by country mile. I mean, New Zealand lost 2 games up against France and Ireland. They beat Wales, and they beat a Wales side outside the test window, which didn't have their main sort of stars, and then they beat USA the week before that. Whereas the Springboks went and beat Wales, a full-strength Wales side, well, as full-strength they can be bar injuries, then a Scottish side, and then just lost to the English side. Whereas Australia lost to Wales, lost to England quite substantially, and lost to Scotland as well. So if we look at the way the rankings currently look, well, we'll look for the end of the year. This is how it stands. Now, despite staying at number one, New Zealand and South Africa have dropped a few points as a result of the match this weekend, which, as you can see, they are back sort of almost South Africa, the only side in the 90s in terms of the points there. So they sit in first place at 90.61 points and New Zealand 88.75. They're still pretty close, but all of a sudden, England with that win over the Springboks have climbed quite substantially in terms of closing that gap. 87.83, they're quite close in on New Zealand and South Africa. Ireland, 86.53, but there's been a rise from France, who go up to 5th place with 85.53 points. They overtake Australia, who drops down to 6th place. So Dave Rennie gets a nomination for World Coach of the Year, and he'll finish as the 6th best ranked side in the year, having lost all 3 Autumn Nation Series matches, basically getting it for beating South Africa twice. That is what he's getting the world. I mean, yes, I know Australia have sort of progressed as a team, but if you look at results on the field, they just beat a French side without most of their top players in that 3-match series in the mid-year, and they beat South Africa and Argentina in the Rugby Championship. That's it. That's all they did. So quite frustrating, actually, when you look at it like that. Scotland sit there in 7th place. Wales have risen up to 8th. Argentina 9th. Very disappointing season for them, but a very, very tough season for them. And Japan have stayed in 10th. So that is your current top 10 teams in the world. And I think, the sort of major issue is the fact that there's no Italy, for example, in and around there. But as South African fans, I think, you have to be a bit retrospective about the entire year, and we have to be quite aware about the challenges that the side face, and yet continue to be the number one ranked side in the world. And to be honest, in this day Autumn Nation Series did look like a side that had more attacking abilities. They looked like a side that did want to keep the ball in hand. And I think we've seen a progression from that first test up against the British and Irish Lions. We won't really count the Georgia one, but from the first test up against the British and Irish Lions up to now, I think there's definitely been a progression where the Boks are trying to play a bit more of a positive brand of rugby. And I think it was always going to take time to sort of come back after 18 months with some incredibly difficult test matches, when you think that basically they were supposed to have 2 matches, but only had 1 match against Georgia, and then were straight into the British and Irish Lions series, which is one of the toughest tests you play, in a 12-year period, basically. And given that you're never going to be able to sort of just hit the ground running with the very attacking nature of standard rugby. So, I think that the Springboks did what they needed to do to get the results, and they continue to do that. And it almost worked. We almost went 3 from 3 in the Autumn Nation Series. So I'm not quite sure where all the negativity around it, and people sort of sitting there saying this coach staff's not good enough, and we're worried about this team. It's going one way, it's going down, etc., etc. We started the year as number one. We will end the year as number one. And I think that, when you think that you won the British and Irish Lions series, that they beat New Zealand, they won 2 out of 3 Autumn Nation Series games, I think there's a lot to be positive about with South Africa. And I think especially because even the team itself are very much talking about the fact that they are growing as a side. They're not the final product. And given the fact that they don't believe they're the final product, I do think there is still quite a lot to come from the Springbok camp, who will not have Rassie Erasmus involved in a match day activity up until September next year, unless his appeal is successful. So it'll be an interesting time now for the Springbok coaching staff in terms of them being able to sort of prove their own credentials and move away from this idea that as soon as the Springboks do well, it's all because of Rassie, and as soon as they do badly, it's all because of the rest of the coaching staff, which I really don't like. I really think it's such a narrow-minded view to sit there and say that, oh, well, Rassie Erasmus is involved, that's when we do well, and as soon as he's not involved against England, look, we lose. It's nonsense. They're a coaching staff. When they win, they're a coaching staff. When they lose, they're still the same coach staff, and you can't nitpick individuals all the time to suit a certain agenda. We're going to break this down a little bit more in our live show tomorrow night, so please do come join us then. We are over 10,000 subscribers, which is pretty amazing, so keep smashing that like button. The next sort of push is to get, 15, 20, and maybe you never know. Maybe we'll be talking about even bigger targets in the future. But thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven, and I'll chat to you soon.